Hello, my name is Ayla Tesler-Mabe, and that was You Are the Sunshine of My Life by the incredible Stevie Wonder. And today we're going to be looking at the magical chords of Stevie Wonder because I've spent a lot of time trying to figure out how Stevie Wonder writes his music and how he comes to certain harmonic decisions. And there are definitely certain tricks that he likes to pull out because they sound amazing. And there's so much to learn from him about songwriting and about music and life in general. So I want to start with a chord progression called a 2-5-1. And if you're not already familiar with this chord progression, it's definitely one looking into because it's used in so much music, especially music that comes from jazz, like soul music. It's definitely inspired by jazz, though of course there's also gospel and rhythm and blues influence. But that jazz influence is very clear when you hear this kind of chord progression. That was a 2-5-1. And we're in the key of C major. C major is a great key to be in. So C is our 1 because C is the root of the key that we're in, which is C major. And so if I want to find the 2 chord in C major, I just find the 2nd scale degree of the C major scale. That's D. And whenever you're in a major key, your 2 chord is minor. That's just the way it works. It doesn't matter what major key you're in, your 2 chord is minor. You could even make it a minor 7 chord, which would instantly add some jazz flavor to it. And you play it just like this. That's a D minor 7 chord. And now we're going to go to our 5 chord, which you find by just playing up the C major scale and finding the 5th scale degree. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's G. And whenever you're playing in a major key, your 5 chord is major. Or, let's make it a little bit jazzier, we'll make it a dominant 7th chord. G dominant 7 is our 5 chord. So far we have D minor 7, G dominant 7, and we're resolving to our 1, which is C major, or make it jazzier, make it a C major 7. So, that's a chord progression that you might recognize the sound of, because like I said, it's used in so many different types of music. But now I want to show you how Stevie Wonder might approach playing something like that. So the most important chord that we're going to be looking at is our 5 chord, because you could argue that the 5 chord is the most important chord of this progression, because the purpose of that chord is to build as much tension as possible before we resolve it to our 1 chord. And Stevie Wonder is the master of taking that 5 chord and making it beautiful or making it really colorful and full of tension so that that resolution just feels so satisfying to the listener. And that's why even his really simple pop songs, if you remove all of the beautiful vocals and the lyrics and everything and just listen to the chords, you already feel something just by listening to the chords on their own. And it's for that reason, because of all of the color and tension that he uses. So the first Stevie Wonder chord, instead of playing our regular G dominant 7, Stevie Wonder might approach it like this. And this chord is actually physically more easy to play because all you have to do is bar with 1 finger. You know, just from the 10th fret of all of the strings and the A string down, just 1 finger. And what you're doing is just adding a few color notes to this chord. Yeah, so again, this was our original chord, G dominant 7. And this is our new Stevie Wonder chord, G9 sus 4. You can just hear there are more colors and numbers in that name. I love that chord. Anytime you come across a dominant chord in any song you're playing, try this voicing instead. See if it sounds good in the context of the song. I think it probably will. the second Stevie Wonder chord is actually taking this same chord, but playing it somewhere else. And so we get a slightly different coloring to the sound of the chord. And this is what it sounds like in context. I'll play the very first 2-5-1 I showed you with the unaltered regular dominant 7 chord. I'll show you that first Stevie chord we looked at, and now I'll show you the new version of that Stevie chord. Stevie chord number 1. Stevie chord number 2. So this chord is also a G dominant 9 sus4, just like this one was. But maybe we can see a little bit more clearly how essentially you're taking the top part of an F chord and putting a G in the bass. So that's another way to think of it. You could think of this as a dominant 9 sus4. You could think of it as an F over G chord. But either way, anytime you come across a dominant 7 chord in your chord progression, you can try to play it with this chord voicing. And it works in any key, of course. So now what we're going to do is make that first Stevie Wonder chord progression just a little bit more interesting. So we're going to come back to this one. But now what we're going to do is add a bit of bass movement. So that time you may have heard that the root note was only changing when I changed chords. But now we're going to hear a little bit more movement. It sounds like this. And so what we did here was, instead of simply approaching our D minor 7 the regular way, where we put D in the bass and just play the chord, which does sound great, but we can take this a step further and actually approach it first with a D sharp in the bass, and then play our regular D minor 7 chord. And the next thing we can do is, instead of just starting our G9 sus4 chord from the root G, we first approached it with a G sharp in the bass, and then played our regular G9 sus4 chord, and resolved it back to C major. And the reason this is a really cool concept to try and integrate into your playing is because a lot of guitar players sometimes neglect the bass movement in chords. We just play the chords as is. But if you listen to a lot of keyboard players or piano players, like Stevie Wonder, for example, who was mostly keyboard-based, even though he played every instrument and does play every instrument under the sun, he's mostly a keyboard player, and you can hear that reflected in his writing because the bass is often moving more than the entire chord is. So if you incorporate that into your playing, you can add a certain layer of sophistication and fun. Yes, you can add fun into your playing this way. All right, so I want to quickly end off by showing you just 2 really crazy chords that speak to that tension-building purpose of the 5 chord that I was first talking about. And this is a really common thing to do in jazz, where these 5 chords I've shown you so far are all really pleasant and beautiful sounding, but they can start to sound really ugly in a cool way when you start adding certain alterations to the chord. And this is a more advanced jazz concept, but I just wanted to put this on the table as something you can work towards. So this was one that I used in the "You Are the Sunshine of My Life" intro. And essentially what you're doing here is, for that G dominant chord, you're turning it into a G13 flat 9, even putting a flat 5 in the top if you really want to, which is crazy, right? And then resolving it to that C major 7 again. And the last crazy chord I want to show you, which I also played in the very beginning demonstration, is something that Stevie Wonder has used in a song like Creepin' at the end of the B section. He's used it at the end of the chorus of Do I Do. This is kind of a signature Stevie Wonder moment. It sounds like this. And essentially, like we've done throughout this video, when we get to that G dominant chord, we're just altering it and making it crazy and playing G minor augmented, and then we end up playing a G7, flat 5, flat 9. You can just hear in the name it's crazy and altered. And then you end up resolving it to C major 7. But those are some chords, like I said, to work towards. If you're a jazz player, you might find yourself wanting to incorporate chords like that. But yeah, I hope that this maybe demystified a bit of how someone like Stevie Wonder might approach writing a song, but at the same time, we'll always be in awe of the way that he writes songs because he's Stevie Wonder, and we think he's amazing, collectively as a human race. I think we can all agree. And I hope that you got something out of this video. Please let me know down below what your favorite Stevie Wonder chord was, and I hope that you try out some of these and see if you can find a way to start integrating these sounds into your playing, because I think that it can really take regular chord progression, like we played at the beginning, and take it to the next level and add a layer of beauty and complexity to it that Stevie Wonder has taught to us. This is all from Stevie Wonder. I'm not the teacher of this video. Stevie Wonder was the teacher, and I was just relaying the information to you. So thank you for watching. Have a nice day. Bye.